Welcome back to the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta, and we're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, especially a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, please click that like button and hit the subscribe button on our channel as well. And today we're talking Minnesota Timberwolves as they had their first preseason game. I mean, they were without D'Lo, Cat, and Rudy Gobert, three of our main players. But even without those three, and Miami Heat only sitting out a couple guys, Jimmy Butler really being the one main guy of any significance. The Timberwolves looked very good against that Miami Heat squad, and it was led by Anthony Edwards, who had 24 points and made basically everything just look effortless. Jaden McDaniels played pretty well in the first half. Jalen Noel was a bucket as well. He had, I think, 14 points or something along those lines, and Taurean Prince actually ended up finishing with 19 points as well. So what were kind of some of your main takeaways as we watched that preseason game last night, Liberta?
Yeah, even though it was a preseason game, I felt like we were really getting after it. And even though we were missing our top three guys, well, not top three, Ant is top three, but the three of our top four guys, and having, D'Lo, Cat, and Gobert, who they are, weren't really sure what to expect, what that would look like last night. But yeah, all these guys stepped up. I think it really is a testament to how deep this bench is. I get it's just a preseason game, but they all hooped in their own respects. So it's like I think I like what I saw. I think it was a great start, and I'm really excited for more. It leaves me wanting more. I think that we have a lot of talent that's going to be really able to shine in moments of the season when I think guys are going to inevitably get hurt or miss a few games here and there. And I think we have guys that can kind of rise to the occasion, fill some pretty significant minutes, and really look good. So I would say that there's not even a lot of injuries this year. I mean, knock on wood, that this could be famous last words, but I'm just saying, I think we could probably endure a lot and be able to be fine for the most part. Obviously, you don't want to see anybody get hurt for a long period of time, but it's just like, as we were saying all off season, I think we have a team now that can kind of, basically thwart off or basically hold off any sort of storms that might come in as far as the problems that come up during a long 82 game season. So I would say that I feel pretty good with what I saw, and I'm looking forward to more. And I think we have a lot of contributors, and it's just going to be really hard to make rotations on a night in and night out basis when everybody's healthy. I think that's another conclusion I've came to.
I know, it's crazy because you just look at some of the guys who played last night. I mean, Jordan McLaughlin checks into the game. We know he'll be the backup point guard, but he checks into the game and everything seems to go well. And the offense is running smoothly. He's creating turnovers. It's a continuation from last year when he was entering games. Then you got, Jalen Noel looked fantastic. He started last night, but he's going to need some minutes. Taurean Prince was looking really good. Kyle Anderson, he didn't score a single point, but in terms of just kind of being that steadying presence, he brought the ball up the floor numerous times. We saw his ball handling. He's got some good passing to him. Obviously, he's a good defender. So there's all sorts of interesting wrinkles there. I thought Nas kind of struggled a little bit. Obviously, he's always kind of struggled finishing around the rim, and we kind of saw that again last night. Nathan Knight got some run. I thought he looked pretty good. Austin Rivers defensively, I thought looked very good as well. I mean, he plays with a good kind of intensity, and he's kind of that veteran player that I think is going to warrant some minutes as well. Bryn Forbes was able to come in and splash a couple threes. He was kind of getting out of heater before they took him out. So many intriguing players up and down this roster. And I haven't even mentioned the rookies got to play in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, I don't see the rookies really playing much at all on the squad this year. They'll probably be down in Iowa most of the year, I'd imagine, which really is a perfect scenario for guys like them because they're not high draft picks. No one's expecting anything of them right away. So they can just go down to Iowa, develop for a year, maybe even two, and go from there. So I'm very excited about just the depth on this team. Like you mentioned, it's such a deep team. Chris Finch is going to have his hands full in terms of, picking players just for a rotation. Because last year we thought it was, we thought it was insane. He was playing with 11 guys for a lot of the season. And now it's you could argue he could play with 12 or 13 with how deep this team is. And they're going to have to cut it down from 20 to 15. And it's going to be interesting to see who the 5 cuts are. So there's a lot to factor into this Wolves team. And obviously we haven't seen the full product yet with Cat, Gobert, and D'Lo out there and how that all meshes, especially with Ant and McDaniels, because those two looked so good last night. But certainly off to a good start. And you can just tell the excitement from the fan base is absolutely there.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's really good energy, really good vibe around this team. There's a lot to be excited about. We've been talking about all off season that we have all this really star power in our starting five now with D'Lo, Ant, Cat, and Gobert, and then everybody is expecting McDaniels to come into his own. There's a reason that we kept him out of that trade for Gobert with Utah. So I think the starting five looks as formidable as anybody's, and it's just going to be exciting to see it all come together on opening night and as the season progresses to see how it just gets better and better and hope it becomes as good as anybody's in the league. So I think that's still more to come, obviously, but it was good to see Ant and McDaniels really play off each other last night. I think those guys, along like you said with Noel, I think he's going to play a really important part in coming off the bench for us and be able to score. Because I think he's the best scorer off the bench that we got as far
Yeah.
as like being able to do a little bit of everything. I know we got like Forbes and TP who could certainly get get out a heater shooting threes, but like besides that, there is a whole lot there, and obviously Kyle Anderson's more there to like facilitate and just kind of do a little bit of everything but shooting really. And so I think that leaves us in a spot where he'll be important. But like you said, it really boils down to that as far as rotations go. It's like who who are this year's Jake Layman's and Josh Okogie's who just like
Yeah.
very sparse minutes, if at all, just coming in garbage time. I don't know who that is yet. So I'm kind of interested to see how that is determined. And like you said, I think this is a really good spot to be in with the rookies where it's like they're not expected to contribute right away by any means. I don't think there's room for them as far as minutes goes. So
Hmm.
I think that's a good problem to have. And they keep their head down in Iowa, get better, and come back to us in another year or two. And I think we really I think what fascinates me too, I didn't even know this till last night that like Forbes and Rivers basically consistently 17-minute a game guys like their entire
Hmm.
career. And like I don't know. I don't know how I see them getting that many minutes on this team, I guess. So I'm very curious to see how that all gets ironed out and see how the distribution goes. I think Finch got a lot of tough decisions, but good decisions to have like on the team to make here to really get as much as we possibly can out of this entire roster that we have.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think minutes for guys like Rivers and Forbes are probably going to come from Nas Reed minutes,
Yeah.
just because like it sounds like Finch wants to keep one of Cat or Gobert on the floor at all times. You'll have Kyle Anderson playing power forward. Torian Prince can play some power forward. Um, so I mean, maybe Nas mixes in a little. Maybe Nathan Knight somehow mixes in a little. But I think the minutes are going to come from that spot, just because you're not going to need a true backup center because you're basically starting two centers and one of them will always be on the floor.
Mhm.
So, between Forbes and Rivers, maybe those two are kind of sharing minutes in terms of, do we need more of a defensive impact or offensive impact? Because I think they're both going to be crucial to this team this year, just in their own specific ways. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on and definitely interesting because they're intriguing players. But speaking of intriguing players, let's jump to Ant here because man, did he look incredible last night. I mean, we knew he's been working on his game all summer. He'd been dropping clips on his Instagram, and the Wolves have been dropping some clips of him too. And obviously, he's just absolutely jacked now. He's put on a ton of muscle. He looks faster and more explosive. He was just all over the court last night, like he should have been in a preseason game where he was easily the best player on the court. Um, I mean, just dominating from three, driving to the basket. Mid range looks a lot better. I mean, what do you make of just the way Ant just seems to continuously improve as the years go by?
Yeah, he just looks like a beast out there. I mean, you said it. He looks huge now. I mean, definitely put in that work in the offseason. He came out with an intensity last night that you wouldn't really expect in a preseason game, I don't think. So
Right.
that's exciting that he's got that drive. I think he wants to go out there and prove to everybody he really is like this top player in the league. So I'm pretty excited to see what that looks like in game scenarios that count for something, and especially once we have our full complement of players. And I think he's on a man on a mission to kind of be like Ja was last year, where it's like that year three breakout where you're like the most improved player and you really put the league on notice. I think that's what
Hmm.
he's going to do this year. And like you said at the top of this, I mean, he made everything look effortless last night. I think both ways, both sides of the ball. You could see him chase down guys on the defensive end, but then on the
Hmm.
offensive end, kind of in his bag, he could hit these threes. He could take it all the way to the rack. Like I think he put a lot more control. I think he's certainly improving his touch. It's great to see, and I think it's kind of a realization now of what everybody thought he could be and what he's turning into now. I think it's all really coming together,
Hmm.
which is just super exciting for us because it's just like a transcendent talent that you're just not accustomed to seeing on one of our teams.
I know it's so exciting because the Timberwolves really have never had a player like this. I mean, Kevin Garnett obviously was a superstar, but
Absolutely.
he was a power forward. He wasn't quite the athletic specimen that Anthony Edwards is, and I mean
Mhm.
he's only 21 years old. But honestly, to me, he absolutely has the skill set to be one of the best players in the NBA.
Oh
And
yeah.
now it just comes with playing the game and learning as he goes and getting better defensively and all those good things. But I mean, even like last night, he was making some really good passes. He made a couple good passes to Naz Reid. I think one of them Naz wasn't able to finish, but the other one he was. He had a couple kickouts like to Jalen Noel for three, Torian Prince for three. So his passing seems to be improved too, which is massive because
That
I
was one of his
honestly,
biggest weaknesses.
exactly, it was. And I honestly think, we don't have much point guard depth on this team. It's D'Lo and it's McLaughlin. That's basically it. Noel can initiate offense. We know that off the bench if we need him to. But I think Anthony Edwards might be running some point guard, especially if D'Lo gets hurt at some point this season. I could see point ant becoming a thing because I think, maybe D'Lo signs like a 1 year extension in the middle of the season, or maybe even after the season he signs here for another year. But I would be willing to imagine, willing to guess there's probably only another year or two of D'Lo left in Minnesota, just because long term he doesn't fit contractually with us having to pay Ant and then McDaniels and already on top of Cat and Gobert. So maybe point Ant is going to have to kind of be the way of the future because it seems he's comfortable doing it. I mean, he's comfortable handling the ball. He seems like he can make good decisions. So I mean, maybe they're just kind of grooming him for that, and which is fine. It'll take some time for him to perfect that, but I think point Ant might eventually become a thing here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ant is willing to take on anything and everything to prove he's the best. And I think one of
Yeah.
those things is becoming kind of, like you said, this point Ant point guard. I think he resembled more than one of those top players, like, LeBron when things really need to get going for his teams over the years, or more recently, probably more like a Luka type player that like really makes everything happen for the Mavericks and like carries them. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's ultimately what Ant could turn into. I don't think that's gonna happen this year, like you said, as long as D'Lo's in the picture, not quite. But like you said, it could be a natural like evolving process where he's just like more and more so until you just realize after D'Lo's kind of like, okay, I'm comfortable rolling with Ant doing this. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of where we're at right now. It's kind of a building process, and I think that's great. I don't think it's just like something easily he could do like overnight. I think it's probably good. One of those things it's probably good to work into.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so exciting to have a player of this caliber on this team, and obviously you bring in a guy like Gobert, who's a stud, multiple time All Star, multiple time Defensive Player of the Year, and to pair that with Cat probably had his best offensive season last year. So, any other final thoughts from you before we take off here, just on the brimming optimism of this Timberwolves team?
Yeah, it's hard not to just go over the top with it as far as everything that we think it's going to be after seeing just one preseason game for what that's worth. I mean, there's just a lot of good energy here, a lot of good vibes, a lot to be excited about. And it's hard not to be like, hey, this team's going to win 60 games or something. Because it's like, I think there is a reality out there where they could do that. But it's like you just feel like you got to temper expectations a little bit just
Mm-hmm.
because this is the first year all these guys playing together. And we don't know yet, truthfully, if the two bigs thing is going to work or not, like how well that's going to go. So
Right.
I think we just got to pump the brakes just a little bit. It's hard to, but for now, I think we just got to pour a little bit of cold water on it, I guess, just cool off just a little bit and wait for things to come together a little bit more, become a little bit more clear. Obviously, we still haven't seen Gobert play a game yet for us in a preseason capacity, even. So I think more to come there. But yeah, definitely reason for optimism here. But can't get too crazy yet.
Oh, come on, Liberta. That's not what the Wolves fans want to hear. But no,
I
I
know.
get where you're coming from because you don't want to set yourself up for massive disappointment. We just
No.
did that recently with our Go for Football squad. Twins are ending a horrific season. Well, really, it was a good season until September.
Yeah.
So they kind of fell apart last minute. But yeah, the Wolves, I mean, I get where, everyone's has these high expectations and, expects them to be contending for potentially a championship. But I agree. We just got to be able to watch the full product first and kind of get a handle on what that's going to look like before we can really come to any conclusions. So
Exactly.
it'll be interesting, but that's what the season's for. That's why we watch. And it's going to be a fun season regardless. Either way, there's too many fun players on this team for it to not be a fun season. So that will do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, please click the like button on this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think about the Timberwolves, how they looked in their first preseason game, how Anthony Edwards specifically looks like a monster, any other thoughts you might have on this Wolves squad as the regular season is fast approaching here. So until next time, thanks for watching.